Boom. So you're on Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy. For those who don't know, I'm Teddy. I almost said I'm Randy. I'm Teddy, and the other dude on the screen is Randy. Our
That's
special guest is trapped in the airport. What's the word? Metaphorically, and he is heading our way. We're going to get started anyway while we're waiting for him. The conversation today is about cryptocurrency, not just from an investment perspective, but from an actual using it as a currency perspective. So we're going to pull our audience into a conversation about this while we're waiting for our special guest, who is Leo Liu. But before we get started, I need to be appreciative of our sponsors. Our sponsors are, hang on a minute, got to hit the button, boom, waka, waka, boom, waka, waka. Our sponsor is Blackwell Captive Solutions. They're all about business healthcare insurance, specifically for business healthcare, which is probably one of the biggest spends most businesses have. So if you want more power and greater transparency from your healthcare spend, then you need to talk to someone like Blackwell Captive Solution, because they've been playing in this field for a long time. They understand how to look at what you're spending and make sure you're tracking and spending the right dollar, not just what the insurance company thinks you need to spend. So look for Blackwell Captive Solutions, blackwellcaptive.com, and let them know that Teddy said that you should have a conversation with them. So boom. So I'm not going to read it, Dale. I'm not going to read it. You have the ability to unmute yourself to jump into this conversation with us if you'd be so kind. So
did you introduce yourself, Teddy? By the way,
say it again.
Did you introduce yourself yet?
Oh no! Hey, for those who have not met me, I'm Teddy. Thank you, buddy, for reminding me. I got all discombobulated because we're changing around. Hang on a minute, Dale. For those not met me, I'm a LinkedIn strategist, trainer, and coach. I help people use LinkedIn as a business tool. Hey, listen to these words. I put this together this morning. Love to hear your thoughts on this, Randy, and to our glorious audience. I'm Teddy. I help people make the right connections to create opportunities for the right conversations that can create opportunity for business or career conversations. That's what I do.
Sounds good. Randy Wooden with Goodwill Industries of Northwest North Carolina, director for our professional center. We are based in Winston-Salem, but thanks to the internet and LinkedIn and such, I've got clients, well, throughout not just the Triad, but around the states. And so once a week, I get together with Teddy on Wednesdays at noon, and we bring in special guests and pretty cool topics. Today's no different. We're going to have Leo Liu. He'll come in and talk about cryptocurrency, something we've all heard about, but what do we really know about it? And this is not just what I'll call a sales pitch to say, get on the bandwagon. Not at all. But we'll learn about its history, where it is today, and a kind of a glimpse into the future and some of the challenges and some of the opportunities that he can see for that industry. So, but again, we've got till about 12:15. He's going to join us. He's got a meeting that did you just say he's detained at the airport, Teddy? Is he stuck?
I'm hoping it wasn't detained by the authorities.
You're not being detained by the authorities, but if you've got something like that, I think, Dale, you had some questions you want to throw out. We just want to get your kind of a temperature check on what do you know about crypto, and what are some questions you think would be great for our guest when he comes on. Dale, what you got?
Sure. So thanks for having me on. And I would say, besides what I seeded in the chat, I think the biggest question to ask someone who's an expert in the field is whether or not they currently own any of the various cryptos that are out there. You know, Bitcoin is the one that most people know of. And then the question is, A, do you own it? And then B, do you use it anywhere? Because as your token IT guy, as I've told you guys before, most of the ability to spend crypto, from my understanding as an IT guy, is not necessarily for above board purposes. Most of its use is on the dark web. But I'd be curious as to Leo's opinion and guidance as to where it's practically usable.
You know, you're gonna hear, and by the way, Leo works for a company called Struck, STRUCK Crypto, Struck Crypto. And I got introduced to him by one of my other peeps. I can't remember who it was. And he said, you got to talk to Leo, because Leo's been playing in this space for some time now. And he's been in other businesses for years and been involved in crypto for a long time. And so I'm answering Chan's question. That's how I found him. So Dale, good questions. And I asked these questions of Leo. We'll ask him during the show. He's really more of a business analyst kind of guy, looking at what's going on with it. And he said to me that it's not just about investing in crypto, it's about using it. And by the way, go look at other countries, and Leo will talk about this. China is a huge area for digital currency, not specifically crypto, but digital currency. There's probably no dollar bills or yens or yen coins or yen bills floating around as much in China as they are here. So Dale, thanks. You use that. Anything else, Dale?
The only other thing I would say, again, as your token IT guy, is I have tried to explain the concept of blockchain in its most simplistic form to many of folks. Even the most 5-year-old explanation goes over most people's heads. So trying to understand what blockchain really is, because the basis of asking what blockchain is gives people the ability to decide whether or not, like US currency, and again, this is obviously subject to your beliefs or not, but do you believe that US currency is truly backed by gold? Yes, no, maybe. Yeah. What does it matter? Do you believe that cryptocurrency, do you believe that the backing behind it, which is the blockchain, is as do you believe that it's what's a good word, Randy?
Secure.
Secure is probably a good word. That's a good lay word. Do you believe it's as secure as US currency backed by gold? And again, even that's subject to interpretation.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, blockchain, Randy and I chatted about this morning. Blockchain is really the foundation. It's really my simple perspective. And Dale, tell me if this is what you understand. Blockchain is the database. It's really where the data is stored. Is that how you understand it?
Yeah, that's a very good simple way to explain it. It's the complexities of it are just so amazing. It's so tight, almost uncorruptible, impenetrable. But a bitch if you lose it.
Yeah, and really the big magic was it's transparent. Hey, Greg, can I jump you in here? Greg's got a good question that I'd love to chat about FTXs. That's what is that, Greg? It's it's like the bank, the exchange.
So FTX was a crypto exchange, and of course, last year or early this year, it kind of failed because it was hacked and accounts were being held in foreign seas. And now I think a Bahamas firm is taking it over. So when you look at other monetary exchanges, how they're held in certain countries and they're subject to scrutiny, you're kind of getting, working in the shadows area.
Yeah, I'm with you. And that's a good question. How many current crypto exchanges are in the US? I don't know the answer.
Yeah, no.
So,
to kind of draw on Teddy and my wealth of experience, given our, the date on our birth certificate. And we remember when credit cards were, credit. And think about buying stuff on the internet and the security involved with that. Like, am I going to give my credit card to some website?
Yeah.
No, that's folly. Why should I do that? So I could see some of the same thing with driving these, the cars that are monitored by the internet and, self-driving vehicles. I mean, do I really want to relinquish? And do I have that trust factor? And is it secure? And all of those things. And maybe those things just take time for people to come to grips with. But I remember the internet, like, I'm not going to give my credit card to Teddy Burriss and type it into a website. I mean, he's just going to empty my account, all $18.10.
32 cents. Greg,
it's all gone.
No. I think the other
Yeah.
thing that Randy brings up with that is since so much can be gleaned from an online credit card purchase, that they can then have your email address, then you go on the company's newsletter, and then now you're like, how am I getting from randywooden.com his quarterly newsletter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I got one this morning.
Yeah.
Had a guy who has some leadership consulting business. And next thing I know, I got 2 emails in one day, back to back, from this guy from his MailChimp, Like, I don't know you from Adam's house cat. How am I on? And I go and look, and sure enough, I'm connected to him on LinkedIn. And obviously he scraped my email address from my account. By the way, hey, everybody on here, we got 11,000 people in the audience. Drop in chat. Everybody, put your biscuit down, put your great knee high down, and go into chat and tell us the first thing that you bought on the internet, the very first thing you bought. And I'll lead the pack. Okay. I'm happy.
Here's this story. You're going to like this one.
Yeah.
It's the feminine clothing.
I did.
story?
I bought a training bra. I bought a child's bra on the internet. And from J.C. Penney's, because my wife and my oldest daughter went looking for I think back then they called, I don't know what they call them now, training bra, and she found one she wanted from J.C. Penney, but it wasn't in stock. So I said, well, we could just go to jcpenney's.com. And so I went to jcpenney's.com and I ordered it and had it shipped. Lance bought shoes. Dale, you had to pay for CompuServe, Dale? I guess
Maybe
you
a
did.
book, huh? Book from Amazon, shoes. I don't remember what I first bought.
That was an awfully long time ago. That was
Yeah,
an
it was
awfully,
CompuServe.
that was a lot of brain cells ago.
Yeah.
Telling me. First bought on the internet, a book
First-
from Amazon.
Probably a book from Amazon. Yeah, Chan held
wow.
off. Chan's like, I'm not going there. Yeah.
Hey, folks, if you're just joining us, our special guest, Leo Liu, is scheduled to join us in about 3 minutes. He is in a meeting that was unable to extract himself from, so he promised to be here at 12:15. And Teddy, we've got a lot of stuff lined up for him. So rapid fire, you're going to be the interviewer, and I'll keep an eye on the chat.
It is a big list of conversations. So
Yeah.
let's see. Kevin's on here. I want to know what Kevin bought. Kevin, what was the first thing you bought on the internet? Let's see. Get my Leo stuff up.
Oh, and with Dale and Greg, do we leave them up on the panel talking like this? Or?
I'm gonna just for the
Okay.
for the right management. I will mute them, and I appreciate you guys jumping in.
Okay.
And so anybody else have a thought? Is there anything else that you want to make sure we talk about when we talk about cryptocurrency in the context of way more than just investing, but in the context of a currency? Someone else has something you want to make sure we talk about, raise your hand, flap your arms, stand up and dance, and I'll make sure that, unmute you and we'll talk about it. Let's see. Dean, the first thing I ever paid on the internet was a bill for AOL. Yeah. So, Dean, you didn't go to radioshack.com and buy a transistor or something. So, anyway, it's going to be I'm hoping to get a lot of interesting stuff out of Leo Liu, who's coming on the show in a few minutes, and really just talk about way more than cryptocurrency as an investment, because it really is. The investors, Randy, are just showing up to help prove the thing can work, and make money doing it.
Yeah. I used to work with a guy in Ohio at an IT company.
Yeah.
Well, there we go.
Yeah.
Leo's getting ready to log into the audio, and I'll tell you that offline later.
You are a man of your word, dude. You said 12:15, Leo, and you're here.
That's right. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So do you want to cancel? Can you cancel out Dale and Greg? Or
yeah. So Dale, thanks a lot. I'm going to disable you just so you don't jump in and harass me. I'm playing with you because you guys trust me. I know that. So hey, you're on Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy, and I'm Randy, and I'm Teddy. I did it, Randy. And Leo, meet Randy Wooden.
Hey, Leo.
And
hi there.
Hey, Randy.
Thanks for joining us, Leo. We've been playing around, and some of the questions that we want to add, if we can, after we introduce you, is Do you own any crypto? Do you use crypto? And can you define blockchain? But we'll get to that in all due time. Leo, would you introduce yourself to our audience, as we are live on LinkedIn, we are live on Facebook, and we have 12,000 people in the audience. So introduce yourself to the audience, please.
That sounds great. So, hey everyone, my name is Leo. I lead the platform at a crypto VC fund called Struck Crypto. Platform, what that means is it's basically what happens post-investment. So after a venture capital firm invests money in a company, it's all about the value add services. So connecting them with different service providers, advising them through processes like fundraising, and then a lot of ecosystem. So forming different partnerships, providing a lot of introductions. My background, so started my career working in finance, spent a few years at a large bank called BNY Mellon, where I was most recently on the corporate venture team. So the focus was on making investments in fintech companies and also partnerships. So got into crypto around that time too. That was around 2018 when working at BNY. So looking at enterprise fintech companies that were focused on digital assets and tokenization. Afterwards, left to spend a few months working at an early stage company focused on startup operations. So these are a lot of the, let's say, more back office operational tasks around payroll, finance, and that sort of work. And then joined a company called Cross River, which is a banking as a service company, as the chief of staff for the crypto team. So spent my career really around emerging technologies, working closely with founders in roles that are focused around strategy and operations.
Yeah. Cool.
Hey, Leo, I always ask each of our guests their why question. You're passionate about what you do, and that doesn't happen by accident. I'm sure there was something that, a single event or a series of events that you said, hey, this is my niche here. This is where I need to be. What's your why?
That's a great question. So I think my why is really around the focus on like innovation and new technologies. Like that's really what brought me into crypto. It was back in 2017, 2018, speaking with people who had a vision for the future. Like they had experience with what's currently going on right now, but they wanted to do things differently. And so that mindset of, let's say, moving quickly and breaking things, I thought that was super attractive. And just to tie it on a personal note, like back then, I was actually always into like the latest electronics. So let's say I knew like the specs of the latest iPhone, Android phones, all that. So it was all about keeping track of like what was new and experimenting with those technologies.
And just as I'm going to keep an eye on the chat and work in comments or questions where I can. So if you have, again, comments or questions for Leo, put them in the chat. Teddy will be the interviewer. And just so you know here, Leo, I'm a layman. I'm not a heavy tech guy on this thing. And I would venture to say most of our audience is not heavy into tech. So just remember, I'm a media major. So keep the keep it down here so that we really get a layman's understanding of where you are and what all this whole thing dealing with crypto is about. So let me turn it back to Teddy. Teddy, take it away, will you?
Cool. So Leo, let's do this. I want to grab one of the questions that one of our guys asked early, and can you help us, and using Randy's idea, which I get, can you tell us what blockchain is?
Yeah. So in thinking about it in a more, let's say, tangible sense, right? A blockchain is basically a database. And there's a few different like aspects towards it. It's a database where every like piece is connected to one another. And so that is like the blockchain part of it. In terms of how this basically applies is there's a term called decentralization. What that basically means is that nobody owns the network. The reason why is because the network itself, it's made of a lot of different computers, let's say. Like each computer is part of that network and they have a copy of that database. So that means this is something that's global. Like there can be computers across the world that are all connected to that network. and processing transactions on top of it, storing data. That's basically a picture of a blockchain. It's a database where every computer is running it and has a copy of it and is not controlled by one central party. That's probably the best way I would describe it.
Yeah, I'm with you. And one of the aspects of that is it not only creates more security because it's all replicated across multiple points, but also one of the other value propositions that a blockchain developer told me about it is that it creates higher level of transparency. There's no action that doesn't happen that someone that is hidden. Am I saying that right?
That is correct. Yeah. So the beauty of it is like the phrase is like activity happens on chain.
Yeah.
So that means like there's something called a block explorer. So it's a website that people can actually go on and then search a transaction and then trace the history behind it. So which address sent it to which and all of that. So it's all publicly available.
Yeah, to that network, within that network. Yeah. Yeah. So and cryptocurrencies are all cryptocurrencies running on a blockchain network or not?
That's a good question. I think even in terms of, I think the answer is like, to my knowledge, I feel like at least the ones that are like very relevant, I would say that they do run on it. To be completely honest, I wouldn't have the confidence to say 100% if they're all running on a blockchain or not.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. And because of the whole world of transition and the upstarts, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so let's go back to I wanted to have that conversation. Let's go back to digital currencies in general. So we'll touch on the investment world, but this is really not about the investment world. So talk a little bit about where you see from what you're involved in. What's the future? What's going on with digital currencies as we use them today, and where do you see it going?
Yeah. So the whole thing about digital currency, like the lens I view it is, it's not just related to cryptocurrency, because digital currency can come in many different forms. One example, it can actually be, I think this was in the early 2000s, there's a game called Second Life. So Second Life was an online game, and there was a currency called Linden dollars. People would use that as an in-game currency to buy things. You can even think of, let's say, in-game currencies, like those are a sense of digital currency. The question is just like, who accepts them? Like, of course, there are ways to convert those in-game currencies into dollars right now. Sometimes the game publisher doesn't allow that, but that happens. But my point here is that there actually are digital currencies right now that are being accepted. One way to picture it is actually, let's say, Cash App or Venmo. Those are essentially digital wallets. So when people go to a restaurant and then split the bill among friends, one person pays with a credit card, everybody else sends them money via Venmo or Cash App. That's, in a sense, digital currency, like a digital US dollar. So that's what's going on in the US. In another country like China, imagine going to a street cart vendor and they don't accept cash, because that's actually what's going on right now. So what they do instead is they have a QR code, and then you can use either WeChat or Alipay. Those are, let's say, very equivalent to a Cash App or Venmo to pay. So basically in China, like, they're readily using digital currencies. Like, a lot of times people aren't even paying with credit cards. They're just using their phone to scan a QR code and then paying from the digital wallet. So that's the current state. Now going into the future states, imagine something like a central bank digital currency. So like an actual digital dollar. This is something that is official, like legal tender, that is not like Bitcoin, where sometimes people have arguments about like what is the actual intrinsic value, but this is something that the US government deems to be like a dollar, but digital. That's something that's there, but can also be programmable. So that means, let's say you can actually set, if your rent is due on, let's say the 30th of every month, you can program it to say automatically send this amount of money to this address. That's what a potential digital currency can look like in the future.
Yeah. That's one of the examples. Randy, something?
Well, yeah, one of our folks just had a concern about, I guess, the security involved with the QR codes. If there's one that's phony or it's altered somehow and it's taking you to a different site, are there safeguards in place to help lessen that likelihood?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think in terms of that, like, one way of looking at it is it really depends on like the method of like what app you're using to pay.
Yeah.
I think, for example, like, just like how Instagram or Twitter, they have like verified accounts. That's one way of identifying who the right person is. So I'm not really a heavy user of, let's say, Alipay or, but let's say Venmo. Like Venmo actually has verified business accounts, so that that's the right link to go to. And then something else that might be a little bit more elementary is like, how sometimes there's like the green lock on a website when you click on it, like that shows that it's HTTPS,
Right.
meaning it's an encrypted site. If it doesn't have that, that's one sign to be careful before going to that website.
Yeah,
sure.
And the other thing with the QR code chaos that has been going on is, I mean, the hackers are putting QR codes out there that says, scan this QR code to see a drop dead, gorgeous, sexy looking kitten. And people were doing that, and boom, they were getting hit with the virus. The answer there is know what you're scanning, know who the person is, know what the business is. And unfortunately, drop dead, sexy, scantily clad kittens attract a lot of people. So
that is right.
So, and I'm with you. Hey, I'd love to hear our audience share this. How many people carry coins in their pockets? Leo, do you have any coins in your pocket?
No coins.
Randy?
Nah, I've sweatpants on. Who needs coins with a pair of sweats on?
I
But,
remember.
I get it though. Right. And
yeah,
I go to the SHRM chapter meetings once a month, and we ask for not to round up like if you go to a store, but if you have loose change around, we ask people to bring it in, and then we put that into the SHRM Foundation. And every month we get a little bit, but we don't get a whole lot.
17 cents,
right.
18 cents, 22 cents. Yeah,
exactly.
So my point is,
yeah,
I stopped carrying coins literally decades ago. I said, I'm not gonna. I remember I had this a glass water jug, the water coolers, now they use plastic jugs. Well, there was a day where they had glass ones, and every night when I came home, if I had change, it went into my glass money jar until it got about halfway full, and then it broke. So here's the other question. Okay. How many, I want our audience to participate, okay? How many of you carry dollar bills, 5s, 10s, 20s in your wallet?
I do. Hey, Teddy, we're almost halfway through the show, so I don't know if you want to work that in before the next question or
I guess my point is, as I wrap this one up, is that I no longer carry coins, and I do have a $20 bill hidden in my wallet for emergencies. But other than that, I don't carry any money. I'm 100% digital, happens to be US dollar digital, but I'm 100% digital currency. So I hear you, Dean, cash is king, but you should see my bank account. I have the biggest freaking bank account in the world. It's nearly empty, but I have the biggest freaking bank account in the world. So let me do our 30-minute spot, and then we'll continue on, and we're right on task. Hey, you're on Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy. Our special guest today is Leo Liu. The conversation is about cryptocurrencies, more about application and less about speculation. Our sponsor is Blackwell Captive Solutions. Randy and I've known Carrie and her team for years. They're really good people. They've been in the business for a long time, 25 plus years. They're all about helping organizations, businesses who are self-funded, specifically in the health insurance area of their business. They have a medical stop loss captive solution that's implemented as a shock absorber against those high cost claims that their employees may have. If you're self-insured with your medical insurance, reach out to blackwellcaptive.com and have a conversation with them. They can help you put that shock absorber in place. So, yeah, my wife, Leo, tells me on a regular basis, here, we're going on a vacation. You put the $100 or $200 or $1,000 in your wallet. Like, no, I don't need to do that. I don't carry paper. I don't. The only place I used to think I needed money for, Randy, was parking meters. I travel around town, I need it for a parking meter. And then we had, what's it called? Park and pay. So, Leo, do you have a car in New York?
No, I don't. And I'm glad I don't.
So. Yeah. So you don't have parking meters to worry about. And you, by the way, we can't afford to park in New York. That's a conversation for another day anyway. So
That's
acceptance. Let's talk about acceptance. Because a lot of people resist it. Dean resisted. What's the acceptance going on? And maybe talk a little bit about how did Chipotle and even AMC theaters start using crypto?
Yeah, exactly. So part of what makes money valuable is acceptance.
Yeah.
Like if no one's willing to take it, then it's not valuable. So basically, like right now, you can actually buy a burrito at Chipotle or a movie ticket at AMC through Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So, you might be wondering like, wow, like I can, like people were questioning Bitcoin before, hey, like, can I actually buy something with it? The answer is yes, you can, but there's actually more behind the story. So what's actually going on right now is this is more of an intermediate step. So let's say Chipotle, for example, if you go to Chipotle and then buy a burrito with Bitcoin, they're actually using a service, the company name's Flexa, that immediately converts that Bitcoin into cash. And the reason why is because that way Chipotle doesn't have to figure out ways to store their crypto. Figuring out a way to securely store your crypto, right? Like that's a big undertaking. So this is an intermediate solution right now where it's interesting. It does increase acceptance, but like these companies are immediately converting that crypto into cash.
So there's a transaction fee for all of this to happen. I wonder, is the consumer getting charged of those transaction fees, or is Chipotle or AMC absorbing those transaction fees?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think that's something to like dig deeper into their business model.
Yeah. I would think. I mean, you remember the day when you go to a store and you say, I want to use American Express, or you want to use a credit card. They go, oh, credit cards, that's going to cost you 3% more. And they would pass the fee back on to the consumer. And but then I believe, I may not have this right, Leo or Randy may tell me if you thought this differently. Somebody said you couldn't do that. I don't know if it was the Federal Reserve, but somebody said you cannot charge the consumer for that. Am I saying that right?
I don't know. I mean, it used to be you could get a discount if you paid cash at certain places, because then
actually there are still gas stations out there, little mom and pop gas stations that do have that discount. So, but my point is, somebody has to pay those transaction fees along the way, and they're probably not much different than this typical credit card transaction fees. Whatever that means.
That's right.
Yeah. But I get it. I mean, we have to be willing as consumers to put our toe into this space and consider using them, consider buying stuff through Amazon on a website and give them our credit card. Consider, using a credit card to pay for parking at a parking meter, and then, on and on and on. So, Leo, do you see any conversation? Well, Randy, you got a thought?
Well, now, I'm always interested in a historical perspective. And so when did crypto really start to, kind of give us, when you want to work it in, and it may not be right now, but the history of this thing, how did it start? I mean, where and how and who were the drivers behind this thing?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but this goes back to digital currencies themselves, because they're in the past, like even in the 90s, there were attempts to look at digital cash. So there's something called e-money, dash money.
Yeah.
So I don't know too much about the specifics behind that, but there's also a cultural movement called the cypherpunks. So that was also like before the year 2000. And that involved cryptography. So these were movements that happened before in the past. Like Bitcoin was not the original. The thing that's important about Bitcoin, though, is that I think is what brought crypto to the mainstream. So the white paper was published. The white paper is basically like, the whole like thesis, the whole like, idea, how it works, all of that. That was published in 2009. So that happened after the great financial crisis. And so like there was a reason why it was published at that point, like after that happened, by a pseudonymous person named Satoshi Nakamoto. So that might not be that person's real name. Nobody knows who that person is. If they do, they'd be a really wealthy person. But yeah, it's like the whole thinking behind Bitcoin was a new monetary system. And that was like what was the like vision. So right now there's talks about, let's say, like inflation, about central banks controlling monetary policy, all of that. That was also very relevant back then in 2008 in terms of that. So the vision was to have a financial system that was not controlled by anybody and really like put the power to the people in that sense. So I think Bitcoin itself, like that coming out, was a major milestone. Part of history.
Yeah, it's good to know.
But the power to the people creates a lot of risk. And so, how do we manage this risk, and how do we, manage a lot of what could happen to create risk, including the nefarious actors that get involved. And so, if the people can do that themselves, and let's keep going forward. I like that idea. So, any questions? Does Las Vegas, Atlantic City? I don't know where Dean's question. I don't get it. So he wants. I guess he wants to know, can he gamble using cryptocurrency at Vegas? I don't know the answer to that. So, and Dean still has a piggy bank. So anyway. So Leo, talk about the payment rail. Crypto is a payment rail, and talk about the USDC stable coin and that picture, would you?
Yeah, define those terms.
Yeah. Yes.
Definitely. So first, in terms of payment rails, this can mean a credit card network. A credit card network like Visa's, that's a payment rail. It's basically a system where different systems can talk to each other and communicate, and then record like balances across those different systems. So when someone swipes a credit card, that information gets transmitted to some other party, let's say another bank, and then there's a facilitation of money transfer. So there's this new currency called USDC. I wouldn't call it new, but this is a digital currency that's actually backed 1-to-1 by the dollar. So this isn't something like Bitcoin or Ethereum where the price can actually fluctuate really heavily, like day in and day out. One USDC token is $1. And the way to prove it is there are actually dollars deposited in a bank account that back up this token. And so like, why would people do that? Like, why would people put money in a bank account and then generate this digital dollar, USDC? Well, the reason why is because it can be programmed. So USDC is compatible with multiple different blockchains. The most popular one is Ethereum. So you can actually send these tokens over the Ethereum network. So Ethereum, in this sense, is like it is a blockchain. Like it's a network, and computers talk to each other. So you can send one ETH, which is the token for Ethereum, from one wallet to another over that network. And the benefit of this is really around programmability. So just as I mentioned earlier, you can insert logic. So let's say every last day of the month, paying rent to somebody automatically. That's something that can be done. This can actually tie to betting. So not in Las Vegas yet, though, with acceptance. For example, if someone does want to like enter into contract with someone, this is called a smart contract.
Mhm.
If you want to bet on, let's say, who wins the NBA finals, you can say, if blank party wins, send money to this other party. That can all be done through smart contracts and through code.
Yeah, and pretty quickly. None of this takes a lot of time.
That's right.
And which is another one of the benefits of digital currencies, whether it's crypto or any other network, is that it can be as fast as you want it to be. And I wonder. So a lot of financial transactions. To give you an example, PayPal. If someone sends you money to PayPal, there's a 3 or 4 day delay before that money actually gets into your PayPal account. Now that has nothing to do with technology at all. Has more to do with floating money. Is that floating money relevant in the crypto space as well, Leo?
So this, I think what you're getting at is a term called the settlement. So basically what's going on right now is the reason why it takes 2 to 3 days, 4 days maybe, for money to actually land in an account is because there's so many middlemen. And that's why there's a standard called T+2 settlement, where that means like it'll take at least 2 days for something to settle when transferred over a payment rail called ACH, which is automated clearinghouse. I mean, put simply, this is basically just a bunch of different banks like within the value chain, like one sending money to another, that sends money to another, that sends money to another. With crypto, let's say with Ethereum, you're directly sending money from one account to another and eliminating a lot of middlemen. It still takes some time, definitely less than 1 day. And it can take even just a few hours or minutes, depending on the network activity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because like, it's not instantaneous because the network says to process it, but you're cutting out the middleman.
I got it. So you helped me understand a little something. I had a much more negative view of that settlement, thinking that it was that all those involved were using that money, it's floating money to be able to, within their own networks. But you gave me some insight I didn't know. I did not know that ACH had those processes that were legitimate business processes. So thank you for that, Leo. Appreciate it. So, and I get the word rail. It kind of makes sense. All the pieces, all the players, all the businesses that are involved in moving money from point A to point B. And if I heard you right, with cryptocurrency or digital currency, you can simplify that rail. But
Exactly,
like
that's right. There's
yeah,
Mhm.
real cool. Central bank digital currencies. And let's talk a little bit about the New York Fed and
New York Fed.
Wells Fargo, and this whole what they're doing to create more central bank management oversight. Am I saying that right? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this is about the topic of central bank digital currencies. So imagine like these are actual digital currencies that are like, from the US government.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of like how to like actually convey the argument. Maybe one way of looking at it is current state, future state. So if you look at like bank issued currency right now, like one data point that I think is super interesting is look at the country of Hong Kong. Hong Kong, like the Hong Kong dollar, like the actual paper currency, that's actually issued by banks such as HSBC and Standard Chartered Bank. Like it'll actually say the name of the bank on those banknotes. This is a system where the government and these banks collaborate in terms of actually getting those like currencies out there. So this is a thing that's already happening, just not in digital format.
Yeah.
So let's say right now, what's going on is the New York Fed and Wells Fargo, which is a major bank, they're testing out what it would look like if Wells Fargo and, you know, if this were to happen, it wouldn't just be Wells Fargo, it'd be other big banks, let's say JP Morgan, issuing these digital dollars that like are literal like digital dollars. So this is something that is going to take a long time because there's like so many parties involved, and like this is related to like the core financial system of the country. So there's a lot of careful testing. There's definitely a lot of interest. There's a lot of papers that have been written and published by the Fed about this too, in terms of like what the future of the banking system can look like when incorporating digital currencies.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about SWIFT, what that is and how that mirrors what this pilot program is.
Yeah, so SWIFT, defining it, it's basically another payment rail. But instead of what I mentioned before about ACH is domestic. So that's, you know, transactions within the USA. Now, when you take it internationally, right, that's a whole new scale. Yeah. SWIFT is essentially a global standard to allow banks to, let's say, send something like wires from one country to another country. So that took a lot of coordination for it to develop because, you know, anytime there's something that's international, like there's so many decision makers out there. But like that happened, and that enables international commerce. Yeah. And so the applicability here is that central bank digital currencies, like it's one thing for governments to figure out what's going on within their own jurisdictions, within their own country, around their currencies. It's going to be a whole nother thing in terms of like, how is one country's digital currency going to interface with another country's digital currency and with many different countries. So it's going to be super interesting. Like, you know, even let's say, I'm oversimplifying it a little bit, but let's say the European Union and the Euro, like that's like one common currency that's accepted among multiple different countries into coordination. It's going to be interesting to see. It might not be one currency like globally, but a standard similar to what we currently have with SWIFT, but applied to digital currencies being developed in the future.
I wonder about the differences in the exchange rates. You know, the dollar gets stronger, other currencies get weaker, and if we take out, you know, the central banks of at least the US, whatever, and now we just go to, let's say, crypto, that may not be under, you know, is, I'm making this up, but is one unit or whatever of, let's say, Bitcoin the same throughout the world, or does it have differing values depending on whatever currency it might be converted into?
That's a really good point.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, so exchange rate risk, I think that's the term. Like that's something that is really real, and that's actually happened before. So one example is actually like during when the war in Ukraine first started, Bitcoin, the trading pair between like the Russian ruble and Bitcoin, that fluctuated really heavily because the Russian ruble also fluctuated. So that was super interesting. Like there are opportunities for people to buy Bitcoin at one price and then sell it at another price in a different currency.
Yeah. And today I make millions and millions of dollars in my mind from the UK, from Australia, from Brazil, Canada, And every time I get, you know, an invoice saying they're going to pay me, the numbers are always different because of the transaction, because of the conversion. And so I get it. As long as you're within Bitcoin, it'll stay the same value. But when you take Bitcoin and drop out into another currency, that's when you have the transition. So it's going to be fun. I love paying attention to it. So Leo, talk a little bit about Visa, because when we talk about the history of Bitcoin, you know, the history of, you know, lots of stuff, you know, we think, oh man, this is all brand new, but this ain't brand new. Talk a little bit, if you would, about the story of Visa and I think Bank of America started.
That's right. Yeah. So a lot of times, like, things repeat themselves. It's super interesting. There's actually a quote by Ray Dalio that talks more about economic cycles, but you know, Ray Dalio, he's the founder of Bridgewater Associates. He wrote a book called Principles, and he's really like a thought leader in terms of the market. It's like, to answer your question, this was back in either the 70s or the 80s, before credit cards were really a thing. Back then, credit cards, like a store, like a general store, they would actually have their own like credit card, and what that was basically just a journal that showed the balances of their customers. None of those talk to each other. Like if I were at Sears or Macy's, I would have different like books for each, and they wouldn't be accepted. So what Bank of America did was, because they were basically like one of the biggest like financial players within California, they were able to basically get a bunch of these merchants to accept their own card. So this goes back to acceptance. Like, they were able to get critical mass, and then eventually across the country. So they had their own credit card. But then what happened was other banks began competing against them. So they had their own, like, they began to assemble their own networks. What eventually happened was Bank of America, because they were still the biggest, they were able to license their technology to these other banks. And that way it got everyone on the same page. So they eventually created what's called Visa, which is essentially a payment rail. So that's super interesting, because like there's similar problems happening right now. A lot of people don't accept crypto. And even within like crypto, there's different blockchains. So there's not just Bitcoin and Ethereum. There's, let's say, another one called Avalanche. These don't talk to each other. Like, these are different standards. And so like interoperability, that's something that's really huge, and it is, I think, going to be required for this to really get big.
So
I gotta
go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, I was going to say, could you give Teddy or whatever? Is there a what I'll call a reputable resource that people can go to? You say, you know, some places don't accept crypto, and you know, as an old guy, I'm sitting here going, I don't know if I want to get involved with that stuff. So, is there a place that a layman can go and read in basic terms that says, hey, you know, you don't have to be? It's sort of like with the internet and putting your credit card in back in the day. Is there a resource you can go to get straight answers on this stuff without people trying to sell you something? Is there a place we can go that we can direct our viewers? That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to clarify,
Yeah.
what would, you know, the user want to like basically read? Like, what are they trying to accomplish?
I can tell you, I was approached years ago. I was going to make a purchase online, and they said, we would prefer that you use Bitcoin. And my first thought was, uh-oh, that's a bad actor. Why don't they take cash money, you know, or a credit card? What's the deal here? So I think it's the safety, the trust factor for me as a guy who's not really been exposed to it, is how allay my concerns that this stuff is legit versus I've heard things about the dark web, or, you know, these bad actors that want Bitcoin because it's undetectable or whatever. And the easiest thing for me is to say, I don't want to get involved.
That's right.
Just like with cell phones, you know, a flip phone was fine. Why do I need this thing? But help allay our concerns about that. That would be my thought. Yeah.
So I have two that come into mind. First one is actually Coinbase. So Coinbase has a whole I think it's called Coinbase Learn, like learning. That's a place where there's step-by-step guides to actually like interact with crypto in compliant manners. Because I would say that if somebody only accepts crypto, that's a pretty big red flag. Coinbase will only direct you to, things that are like, completely compliant, and they give step-by-step directions. That also includes NFTs too. So if people want to like experiment with NFTs, Coinbase has those step-by-step guides, and they're the biggest crypto exchange in the US. So it's super reputable. That's probably the best starting point.
Yeah.
Another one is called Rabbit Hole. This is a much smaller player, but this goes a little bit deeper into like actionable steps people can take to basically like get started in crypto.
And is it rabbit hole, just like all one word, co.com? Do you know?
Try rabbithole.gg.
Okay. We'll check into that. And we'll check into that later on. Teddy, we're getting a little short on time.
Yep. So I found it.
Yep.
I'll be able to get it out there. So, Leo, I wanted you on here because this is a conversation. This is like, do I get a MasterCard from the 70s? Do I go to crypto? And it's not going to go away. It's going to continue to grow. And I think this is only one step in us continuously learning and helping others to understand that that it might be. I use this term with another conversation. It might be the wild, wild west of digital currency, but it's going to get more under control and it's become more understandable. And at that time, we'll start getting more adoption. What I know is out there now. Not only do these merchants have, accept MasterCard, Visa, and American Express, but there's now the guy who's going to make money is the guy who's making the new window sticker that says, I accept Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, because we're going to see more and more of that out there. Leo, is there one thing that we may have or may not have talked about that you want to make sure the audience understands, that you want to leave with them before we close out?
Definitely. So you brought up a really great point about something being here to stay. So like, if you assume that, then it's like, first, don't approach it with like fear, because like these new technologies, like it can be really frightening, it can be super overwhelming and all of that. But it's important to then keep track of what's going on. Like one way of doing that is actually like learning by doing. Yeah. So I actually want to make a comparison to AI. Like for people like ChatGPT, like that's something that people have been talking about like recently, right? With venture capital, those value, even though the market's doing really poorly right now, like VCs are pouring money into AI startups because it's like the hot thing. People are writing articles as well about like Doom, like what's called AGI, artificial general intelligence, all of that stuff. Yeah. Like, thankfully, I think that's like far away. I have no experience around AI, so I'm not an expert, but I want to tie this in because like, let's say ChatGPT, that's free for people to use. Like using that, I think that's good to like understand like what's going on. Like that's a pretty small step to make someone like, educated around that topic. Similar to how, let's say, Coinbase Learn, that's something people can use right now to get a little bit a sense of crypto. And so it's like through learning by doing, I think that sort of demystifies a lot of these new technologies.
Yeah. And you don't need to learn with $10,000 or $100,000. You can learn with a few dollars. Yeah. So, Leo, thank you for coming on today. And by the way, we touched on crypto, and in our audience is a dude by the name of Kevin D. Turner. Kevin's coming on next week, and Kevin, and I'm using the title, Kevin will probably have me change it, but Kevin next week's going to come and join us. He's going to talk about the wild, wild west of GAI. And so we'll talk about, Chat GPT, and we'll talk about other areas of artificial intelligence that we all now have access to. and we can use it for our own for our own benefit.
Mhm.
We're also going to talk about how to manage it, how to pay attention to it, so that and why it can be important to us. So that's next week with Mr. Kevin D. Turner. Again, the conversation is going to be all about GAI, which is generative artificial intelligence, which is basically another way to refer to some of the tools such as Chat GPT. So again, Leo, thank you very much for being on the
Thanks,
show.
Leo.
Thank you to our audience. We're grateful to our sponsor, the Blackwell Captive Solutions, blackwellcaptive.com. They bring peace of mind, price stability in that whole area of self-insured health insurance. So everybody take care. Randy, anything else before I say goodbye?
No, great show. Thanks for coming on today. Really try to explain that. And yeah, excellent. I'm going to check out a couple of these websites because it's something that's not going away. And either, you get on the thing or you get run over by it. So let's get on it. All right. Have a good day, guys.
All right. Take care. Bye, Leo.
Thanks for having me.
Yep.